At my first ministry, I was introduced to a metaphor for preaching that once I heard it, I've never been able to forget. The metaphor is landing a plane. And the idea is it's the end of the message, right? And so you've been talking for a while, and it's time to bring this thing to a close. And as a staff, we were at a large church. The guy who was the lead pastor there, his name was Jerry Harris, just a master communicator, and was so good and so gifted in so many different ways at preaching. But as a staff, we were always with multiple services and everything that's always going on. You know, we're watching a clock. We're trying to manage all the details related to it. And so this metaphor of landing a plane became something that we talked about internally whenever he was preaching. Like, it's time to land the plane, man. Like, it's time to bring it on down. And he was so good at it. Like, he was so good at coming up from 30,000 feet and then bringing it down and just really driving it home. He actually would step down the steps to the floor level every sermon as kind of a cue that he was moving from, cruising level to like, let's bring this thing in. And so it was visually a little bit of a cue, but there was also like a way to pull everything that he'd been talking about together at once. Sometimes he might say, I told you all that to say this. And that was kind of like the sermon in a sentence. Like, I had 30 minutes, but here's really what it's all about. Or he would connect a challenge to it or something. There were times when we would watch him, he would come and he would buzz the tower. He would act like he's landing, and then he'd circle back up and he'd go a little bit longer. And we'd go, nope, that was just the quick little touchdown. And then we're going to go back for a little bit more. Well, then as we grew as a church, we went multi-site. We started planting churches in different communities, an hour away, hour and a half away, half hour away. And we did a live broadcast from our main location to them, except for that the local campus pastor, their task, and this had become just a phrase cemented into our church, our staff culture, their job was to land the plane. And so he had a cue in his sermon, and when he said these infamous words, you knew as a campus pastor, your job was to get up, the video feed was going to go down, and you were going to finish wrapping up the sermon. You were going to land the plane. And that was always nerve-wracking for me, sitting on the front row, just waiting to hear a phrase. We talked about this as a staff a lot. How are we going to transition from your sermon to the localized application? Are you going to pray? Could you pray? That would have been the easy way. We asked him to do that because that's a lot easier. Why don't you start praying? As you wrap up, we move in position, you say amen, and then we go. And he said, no, because I don't want it to disrupt what I'm doing at the main campus here. He goes, I'm going to say this phrase. We're moving to a time of decision. And every sermon, for the duration, still to this day, that phrase hits. And when that phrase lands, everything springs into action because that sermon is now moving from up high to down low. I may not ever say it quite like that to you, but that is so deeply entrenched in how I communicate that I am up here as I'm preaching, thinking in my head, land the plane. Land the plane. I start looking back and I start seeing where I've gone, how much time I have left to say what I need to say. And I'm thinking some weeks, you guys are going to have to buckle up because we're going to make a really quick descent down. Like it is what it is, right? I got a little too carried away in one of the points. I don't know what happened. And now I got to get down and we got to get down quick. So that metaphor is in my mind and it's never, ever escaped when it comes to communicating. One of the things I love about Jesus is that he not only is someone who has great content, but I can also look at him and go, how did he do what he did? And we've been studying for the last 8 weeks together as a church through the summer, his most famous sermon. And what we're going to get to do today is we're going to get to watch him and listen to him as he lands the plane. He's going to do so in the most masterful, skillful way after taking us 8 weeks through kind of this kingdom landscape. Talking about the Beatitudes, talking about what he came to fulfill, talking about anger and lust, talking about how to overcome those things that are inside of us, talking about judgment, talking about worry. He's just been taking us on a grand tour of the kingdom world that he's come to invite us into. And it's so much better than anything else that we could ever imagine. And now what he's going to do is he's going to craft the most masterful invitation, the most masterful plane landing that you've ever heard in your life. And what I'd like to do this morning, before talking any more about it, is just read it and let you hear it straight from him. This is how Jesus concluded the most famous sermon that he ever preached. Matthew chapter 7, verse 13. Enter through the narrow gate. For wide is the gate and broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many enter through it. But small is the gate and narrow the road that leads to life, and only a few find it. Watch out for false prophets. They come at you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they're ferocious wolves. And by their fruit you'll recognize them. Do people pick grapes from thorn bushes or figs from thistles? Likewise, every good tree bears good fruit, but a bad tree bears bad fruit. A good tree cannot bear bad fruit. A bad tree cannot bear good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. Thus, by their fruit you will recognize them. And not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only the one who does the will of my Father who is in heaven. Many will say to me on that day, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name, and in your name drive out demons, and in your name perform many miracles? And I will tell them plainly, I never knew you. Away from me, you evildoers. Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. And the rains came down, the streams rose, the winds blew, and they beat against that house, yet it did not fall because it had a foundation on the rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who builds his house on the sand. The rain came down, streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell with a great crash. He didn't use the phrase, we're coming to a time of decision. But effectively, that's exactly what the end of the Sermon on the Mount is. It's a moment to take everything that you've listened to and everything that you've heard and bring it inward and say, what does this mean for me, and how do I move forward from here? In this plane landing, in this conclusion, Jesus isn't looking and saying, as a reminder, here's what I told you, and let me summarize it again for you. No, instead, he moves towards personal invitation and challenge, to look inward, to evaluate the challenge that he gives, and to respond with a movement step forward. What he says, by painting a picture of two roads, of two trees, and of two houses, is essentially this. Everyone is on a road, going somewhere. Everyone is becoming something, and everyone is building something that will one day face a storm. And I want you, with those three pictures in mind, to hear this invitation that Jesus offers with an open mind, an open heart, and with fresh ears. Jesus says first, everyone is on a road. Are you on the right one? He doesn't ask whether you're traveling. He gets you to think about where the road that you are on right now is heading and where is its destination. What he's saying is that no one is sitting still in life. You may be sitting still right now listening to this, but your life is in motion. That's just the way it is. That's just the way every life is. Your life has a trajectory, and the only question is, where is the road that you are on ending up? We often like to think about life through millions and millions and millions of possibilities, and we even encourage young people and graduates, like, what do you want to do? What do you want to be? Where do you want to go? You be you, and you'll be great. It'll be fine. It'll all turn out in the end. Jesus has a very different view of life. He sees it in a very dual way. There's two roads. There's a wide road and there's a narrow road. There's a wide road and narrow road. They go to very different places. So to hear what Jesus says and live otherwise would be foolish. It'd be like getting on I-65 North and saying, I'm going to Nashville. No, you're not. You're not. You're going to Chicago. And you can think it, you can want to, you can be confident, but you're wrong. That road only goes one place. And you can't get on the road that goes one direction or one place and assume you're going the other way. Every road is going somewhere. Everyone is on a road. Are you on the right one? He talks about the wide road and the narrow road. The wide road And what makes the wide road dangerous might be surprising to you. It's not the fact that the wide road is full of bad people. It's full of villains. I mean, possibly, yeah, they're there. But what's so dangerous about the wide road is that it's so easy. It's so comfortable. And the fact that you can choose to go on the wide road to destruction, but you also don't have to choose it to be on it. Because if you don't choose it, you're on it. If you don't choose otherwise, you're on it. That's the way the wide road works. It is the default road. It's the road that we all will naturally find ourselves on. You don't have to drift to the wide road. You're on it until you're not on it. Contrast that with the narrow road and the narrow gate. There's a very distinct decision involved with it, a gate off of the wide road that leads to a very specific path. It's one you can't possibly drift into. You don't just find yourself there. You don't just stumble onto it. Jesus says, enter. This is verse 13. Enter through the narrow gate. And it's an invitation. It's an invitation. I know that there's a lot about wide road and narrow road that sounds kind of like, it just almost sounds threatening. But it's not Jesus standing with a velvet rope like a bouncer in front of the gate saying, no, you don't make it in. He's saying, no, I want you to come in. But to come in here, you very distinctly have to get off the wide road to enter through this very specific space, this gate, to enter into a narrow road. He says it's here, not to identify it as in a stingy way, but in a very clear way. Here is the gate. Here is the path. Here is how you get there. Only a few find it, he says. I know that sounds negative, but the good news is, but it's findable. It's there. It does exist. There's a wide road that leads to destruction. There's a narrow road with a very specific gate. And not everybody finds it, but it is there. And you're welcome. Jesus says, come. He spent 3 chapters drawing a map of the kingdom. And now he's inviting his listeners to enter it. Come in. Come in. And it's the right path isn't literally a path. It's actually a person. He's saying, I'm the gate. I am the gate. You come through me, and then you find yourself on the narrow path. It's a person standing in the light, calling you by name. And that's the first invitation. He calls you to the right road. The second picture is of 2 trees. It's designed to make you realize that everyone is growing something. Everyone's life is producing fruit. What is yours producing? Is it producing good fruit or is it producing bad fruit? Every day, your life bears fruit. Every day. From the way you treat people to what comes out of your mouth to what happens when you're under stress or pressure. There's tangible things that your life is creating or doing. Your days are actually adding up. So Jesus says, well, is your fruit good or bad? Would the people who know you, who watch you, who observe you, who spend time with you daily, would they say, yeah, her fruit is good fruit. His fruit is good fruit. Or would they say, no, it's bad? Now, before you answer too quickly, Jesus even elaborates on what bad fruit is. Because I think there's obviously bad fruit, and you all know what it looks like to find something rotten in your fridge that you left for way too long and you forgot about, and you go, whoa, okay, that's off the table. That is bad fruit. I don't have to convince anybody anywhere in the household that this is bad and that no one should eat it. It's just like, it's clearly bad. He is referencing that, but he actually broadens this definition to a different kind of bad fruit. What he's saying is not all bad fruit looks rotten. Some of it looks delicious. But it's just not real. It's just not real. Because you can actually staple fake fruit onto a living branch. You could staple good fruit onto a dead branch. Either way, it's not real. It's not real. There are ways that things externally can look a certain way, but internally, they're not actually connected. They're not actually connected. Good fruit isn't something you manufacture. It's a result of being connected intricately to the tree. Jesus would later, in John chapter 15, near the very, very end of his ministry, right before the cross, speak to his closest disciples and say it this way: I'm the vine, you're the branches. You remain in me and you'll bear much fruit. But you separate, if you're apart from me, you can't bear anything. You can't produce anything. So part of the invitation is, well, stop performing fruit. Stop trying to manufacture fruit. And I hope this for some is like a relief, because it could have been for Jesus, many hearers in his day. Jesus stepped into a world where people had master's degrees in manipulating external behaviors that looked like the kingdom of God, when inwardly there was actually no connection whatsoever to it. And before you think that's not you, that you'll never go there, you've never struggled with that, think about for a second moments where you have said something, done something, been somewhere, participated in, not done something that was all specifically related to, I know what I'm supposed to be doing here. I know what I'm supposed to be saying here. I know, like, I'm living kingdom principle, but I'm not at all connected to the king. Jesus would warn against this and about that being connecting fake fruit as a kind of bad fruit when he says in verse 21 that not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven. He said, many will prophesy, many will perform miracles, many demons will be driven out in my name, and yet I will not know you. I will not know you. That description of demons driven out and prophecy and miracles, that would appear to the eyes to be evidence of good fruit. Obviously, that would appear to be good fruit. From the road, it looks gorgeous, and Jesus says, these trees were never alive. Never alive. So notice exactly what he does not say. He doesn't say, you never worked for me. That's clear. You did. He doesn't say your fruit wasn't externally impressive. He says something far sadder. He says, I never knew you. I never knew you. What he's trying to make the point here is that you can live a life that is adjacent to the kingdom and not actually be submitted to the king. You can be around the kingdom and connecting to the kingdom through participation in activities, but not actually be connected to the king. He's speaking specifically about some false prophets, but it's a broader principle that's here as well. He's saying close isn't in. Close and adjacent to the kingdom isn't in the kingdom. It's a narrow gate. And you enter through it very specifically, through me. He's not saying that in a way that's trying to be harsh. He's saying it in a way that's honest and clear. Maybe like a doctor would say something very clear and honest about a condition to give you a warning out loud to let you know there is time to change, but you need to know that if you stay on this trajectory, you will not see a future like you want it to be. If that unsettles you, if that stirs something in you and it makes you go, man, what is that? I do know him, or do I know him, or do I just know about him? That's the kind of unsettling that is a healthy kind. It's part of why he said those words. The people in the story didn't see it coming. But most of what he would do in ministry with crowds would revolve around the fact that they wanted to be near Jesus without submitting fully to him. Jesus is saying, don't run from me. I'm inviting you out of a stapled on religion and into the living root. I'm inviting you out of close and into connected, bearing much fruit. Just like everyone's on a road, everyone is bearing a fruit. And there's one more picture that he paints. And it's of two houses. Two houses. And Jesus has saved this one, I think, for the end on purpose, because it really just paints such a vivid picture about the whole sermon as a whole. The third picture is of two houses, and he tells this story to make this point. Everyone is building a life. Just like you're on a road, just like you're bearing fruit, everyone is building a life. The question is, will yours survive the storm? Will it survive the storm? Everybody's building a life, and it's a life that you're assembling piece after piece, year after year. But maybe one of the most surprising realities of life with Jesus is life with Jesus does not mean no storms. It doesn't mean no storms. He's honest to say this is out in front of everybody. Out in front of everybody. Jesus does not offer you a life with no bad weather. I think part of the surprise of life with him is that he doesn't. And if you haven't ever wondered or stumbled or wrestled with that reality, just buckle up. At some point you will. And you'll wonder, God, why don't you just offer life with no bad weather? Why don't you just push the clouds out? Why don't you just make it sunny every day? Why don't you eliminate all the struggle and all the pain and all the difficulties that we go through? Not just because I'm trying to be like a baby here or just trying to admit like I'm just so weak, God, just please, I need you to take all this away. But it's like, no, some of this is brutal. It's hard. It doesn't seem to make any sense. Jesus doesn't offer life with no bad weather. He never does. Multiple times he said things that legitimized that there will be, even for his closest followers, moments of life of pain and difficulty and suffering and struggle that will not necessarily go away. And the point is not that they go away on my timetable. The point is the house that I've built secure, no matter what storm comes? It's a question that suffering and difficulties in life will make you question. Nobody questions whether their house is built securely when the sun is shining and there's no wind and there's no rain. But when it's storming, all of a sudden you take a special interest in your home in a different way. And you're wondering about your windows, and you're wondering about the siding, and you're wondering about the roof, and you're wondering ultimately about the foundation that the whole thing is on. Is this thing going to be secure in this moment? So don't hear Jesus promising that if you follow him, the rain will stay off your roof. That's not what he's promising. What he's actually promising is something stronger than that. That even if, or even when the storms come, the house will still stand. Every moment of your life is not a storm, but there are moments where they come. We've been living one at our house for a few months, not unlike a storm that many have gone through in their world. We're not special in that respect. We're just in a storm. And as we've gone through ours, we've been put in proximity in life with a lot of people who are going through a very, very similar storm. Just the nature of going through treatment and being at the hospital weekly just ends up putting you around people who are in storms themselves. And there's a lot of familiarity with it. You come to a place where you're recognizing faces, even if you're both in a hurry going different places. It's like, I saw them last week. I saw them the week before. I saw them for the last 3 months, every week at the same time. And you track their progress from afar. They're probably tracking yours from afar. I can't help in this journey that we've been on to, in my mind, ask this question. Are they going through this storm with a house built on the rock? Or is their house being carried out to sea right now? I don't have time to ask them that question. Maybe it's I don't have the courage or the boldness to ask them that question in the moment. But I'm wondering that in my mind often as we're in the hospital and as I'm watching people go through this experience. Because I know for me, the storms at our house have caused me to go down and look at the basement and check the walls. They've caused me to look very, very intently to say, are we secure? Because what happens is a storm blows through life and it's like windows get blown out of your house. Or maybe part of the roof gets torn off. And some storms come and go in a matter of hours, and then some storms stick around for a long, long time. And with those windows out and part of the roof gone, it's like, why are we're still taking on rain. And we cleaned it up yesterday, but it's raining again. And we cleaned it up the day before, but the carpet's soaked again. And we cleaned it up the day before that. This just keeps raining, and we've got nothing covering us right now. And you just feel like perpetually stuck in a storm. And while that's not pleasant, and it's not pleasant at all, and I'm not trying to glorify it, it's a whole lot better than having the entire house carried out to sea and dashed into a million pieces. To put up with some wet carpet, to put up with some inconvenience, to struggle and know that, man, this is not fun at all, but someday the sun is going to come out, the windows are going to get put back in, the roof is going to be patched back up. It starts to give you a peace of mind that allows you to realize, I have a joy even in this hardship that isn't going to be touched. Because this house is built on a rock. It has a firm foundation. And what Jesus was asking us to consider is the house that we've built our life on built on a strong, firm, rock-like foundation, or is it just built on the sand? And when the storms of life hit, and they will, it could be joblessness, it could be a financial crisis, it could be a health crisis, it could be a death of someone near you. When the storms hit, will your house stand? To answer that question, you go back and you look at the builders and you go, what was the difference between the two? Why did one build on the rock and one build on the sand? Were they just two alternative viewpoints on how to build a house, how to build a life? No, he says this. He says in the story, or in the sermon, he says, the wise builder listened to the words, and did them. The foolish one didn't put them into practice. The difference was never hearing the words, it was building your life on them. And the crowds, it says this in verse 28, that when Jesus had finished saying these things, the crowds were amazed at his teaching because he taught as one who had authority and not as the teachers of the law. Built on the rock is not try harder. Built on the rock is not a self-improvement plan where you white-knuckle your way through a storm-proof life. It said in that verse that we just read that the crowds were amazed at him. Now, this is two things that are significant here. One that's good, one that's not good. The fact that they were amazed at him is good because that's the goal of what he was trying to do, is help you say, I'm not just speaking these words so that you hear some preacher man, some wise guy tell you a different way to live. I'm actually inviting you to bank your life on them, but by banking your life on them, I'm actually inviting you to bank your life on me. It's about me. The part that's bad about it is that it stopped for this crowd at amazement. And amazement is not a decision. Amazement is not a decision. And there are many people who love to sit on the outside and stay amazed with Jesus, amazed at Jesus. Boy, I love the red letters. I love to read the Bible. I love his way of life. I'm amazed by Jesus, but I'm not surrendered to him. That's not a decision. To just stand outside and go, what a great story, what a great principle, what great wisdom. In the end, the difference between the wise and the foolish builder was one listened to those red letters and said, those are amazing. And another listened to them and said, I'm going to rebuild my life on those words. And so at the end of Jesus' most famous sermon he ever preached, he stops describing the life that he's inviting you to enter. And he asks for your answer. For your answer. Not with his arms crossed trying to keep you out. Not disappointed in what brought you here to this point. Any struggles, any failures, any difficulties. He's not trying to scare you away with the narrow gate. He's actually standing there holding it open, but he's honest to say, this is the only way in. This is the only way in. He showed you the two roads because he wants you to get on the right one. He's talked about the two fruit because he wants you to bear the good one. He told you about the two houses because he knows that storms are coming. And if you don't build your house on the rock, that house will not sustain. Three things are true of everybody here this morning. You are on a road going somewhere. You are like a tree becoming something. And like a builder, you are building a life that will someday face storms. So hear, as clear as I could possibly say it, what Jesus offers to you with an open hand. He says very clearly, I am the gate to the narrow road. You're welcome to come in. He says, be rooted in me and bear fruit that you could never force on your own, the real living fruit of the kingdom of God. He says, build on me and you will be standing secure. You will be standing secure no matter how fierce the storm. So we are now at a moment of decision. And that decision is yours. A moment for you to hear how Jesus brought this message home in the most tangible way for you to hear. And a moment for you to respond, maybe for the very, very first time, to a God who would do immeasurably more than you could ever have imagined to make sure you had an opportunity to do life with him forever, for all others who would call on his name in the same way he's calling you to. Maybe you've forgotten somewhere along the line. That's how you started in this journey of faith, but somewhere along the line this became more about externals and managing fruit, manufacturing it on your own. Maybe this is an invitation back. Maybe it's a warning that the road that you've been walking is a road that does have a destination that you don't want. It's time to course correct. Maybe you're in a storm and windows are being blown out. Roof feels like it's being peeled off. It's a chance to go down and check the foundations. And if you are rooted in Christ, that house will never ultimately be torn apart. It will stand no matter how fierce the storm is. So I'm going to invite you, if you would, just to stand and join me in a word of prayer as we ask the Lord to show us all that he has for us and what he intends for us to do to respond to him. Heavenly Father,